Hello and welcome to Stirling Armory's Sword Talk. We have a good one today. So for the last several Sword Talks, we've been kind of focused on a lot of stuff that we've been doing, whether it's HEMA tournaments here in the U.S. or upcoming events. But I had a chance to take a trip, our honeymoon to Scotland, and got a chance, a wonderful opportunity to talk to, if you've seen the title of the video, you probably already know, Paul MacDonald. So I wanted to, we got into a great conversation about a number of things from a maker's perspective, especially. So I really wanted to bring him on to kind of do a great sword talk about this. So without further ado, let me bring on our special guest. Hey, how's it going, Paul?
Not so bad. How's yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. So I don't know if you saw me fumbling there. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out all of our layout for StreamYards has changed, so it's really confusing to follow along here. And so if you caught the beginning when Sword Talk popped up, it popped up too early, and then I came on too late. And so, oh, you know what? I also forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Chris Fields. For anyone new watching, all of the 5 viewers we have. But my name is Chris, owner of Stirling Armory. And we're sword makers here in the U.S. between myself, Josh, and Colton. Due to the time schedule that we're doing with Paul here, so he's 5 hours right ahead of us. So yeah, it's 8 p.m. his time, so it's earlier my time. But then Josh and Colton are way out west, so it's early morning for them. So I didn't want to have to yank them on that early. So, but yeah, excited for a sword talk today. So Paul, yeah, when I forgot when I messaged you, if it was when I was already over there, but thanks for the opportunity to swing by the shop. I love your new shop, or I guess not that new, but you've been there for a little while now. So
Yeah, been here. It's still relatively new. Been here, I think it was 2020, moved the Armory from Edinburgh to here in the Borders.
Yeah, so do you want to give a little intro for yourself? I think everybody knows who you are, but just in case anyone watching may not know.
Yeah, sure. So Paul MacDonald, I run MacDonald Armories. That was established in 1998, and was being based in Edinburgh until 5 years ago. We moved that armory to home, and I think that was one of the best moves ever. Because it's now become a way of life more than feeling like a job that you travel back and forward to. So mostly making custom swords and knives, teach traditional swordsmanship, European martial arts, and do some traditional storytelling as well.
Awesome. Yeah. I was saying, are you still doing the tours?
Sorry?
Are you still doing the tours?
Tours, yeah. I'm still running. I'm running a Highland Challenge event, a week-long event this year. There's still places available. And I just gave a wee tour today to a couple from Texas over at Traclair House, which is not far from me right now.
Yeah, I'll have to make sure I get one of those at one point. So, yeah, that'd be great. So if you have any links, by the way, go ahead and send them to me, and I'll have them listed below in the YouTube video here. So yeah, when I reached out to Paul, I had read your article. I think it was your article on the 2 swords found at Stirling Bridge, and yeah, I was just I don't know why. Do you recall when that was written? A couple of years ago, or was that pretty recent?
Yeah, it was probably I think last year sometime.
Oh, it was last year? Okay. For some reason, I was thinking back, like, wait a minute, like, how did I not know about this already when I saw it? Because I saw it like I think a week before I took the trip, and I was like, oh my gosh. So that's why I was like, I wonder if these are available still, or if you still had them. And so yeah, Paul graciously invited me down to come see them, and so you had one of the blades was the longsword that you reproduced, and you have that, but the original one of that is back to its owner, correct? Is that correct? And then the arming sword is you did still have the original one, which was extremely exciting to see. I guess before we dive into some images and stuff, do you want to give a quick background on the 2 blades and kind of, I mean, how exciting this is to have 2 pieces from the Battle of Stirling Bridge? I mean, that's kind of incredible. So
yeah, it is pretty amazing, and it's always, I always get excited by any sword that's got some legendary provenance in that sense, connected to a
Yeah.
particular battle or particular individual that way, because these are the rarer swords that are out there in the wild to find, I think. So yeah, the first sword that I was aware of was the longsword, and I was made aware of that first through an article that said Bonham's auction house in Edinburgh had a valuation day, and somebody came along with this rusty old sword. It was quite well preserved, actually, and mounted on wood, and they must have been given a healthy valuation because he decided to consign it to auction. But in the article, there was no images of the sword, so it made me more intrigued as to what that was, and I fully expected to find an 18th century broadsword with provenance that it was used in the 13th century, because I've seen that kind of thing before, right?
Yeah, very common, yeah.
Yeah, but I got access to study that one first, and it turned out to be absolutely spot on. Like mid to late 13th century, German, trace remains of German maker's mark both sides, but perfect for the period. Absolutely perfect. And even the condition overall, you could say, was right for being a freshwater find.
Yeah. What's
the problem recovered in the 19th century, and everything looked absolutely spot on with that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's pop up. So I'm going to pop up an image of that, or a couple of images here. So yeah, so this is the recreation that you did, and we didn't get a chance to talk too much about how long it took you to do that one, but I'm really curious with the measurements you took, because that thing's so precise. I'm really curious how long just the measurements section took.
Yeah, I was keen to get the measurements as absolutely accurate as possible, and in some areas I was allowing for a little bit of material loss, corrosion loss,
right.
But wasn't wanting to add too much at the same time. So that's always something you've got to just figure out in your mind, really, what's best to work. But as far as I could with all elements, because every part of that sword was hand ground, I've got everything down to the same 1/10 of a millimeter in all three dimensions for every element.
Wow. So here's I think I have this, so that's another image of the reproduction with a really nice background. So, I mean, that's a beast of a blade. So I saw it in person, so I know the size of this. So seeing the image doesn't really do it justice, I don't think, but the beefy pommel and a beefy blade. And here is, we got some side-by-sides of yours versus the original there.
Yeah, so I managed to finish the reproduction just before it was auctioned off in Edinburgh. So I as soon as it was done, I hastily called the auction house and said, "Can I come back down, guys, and just do a photo shoot of those two swords of the reproduction and the original side by side?" And they were happy to oblige.
Awesome. Yeah. That was, I got a chance to handle that one, and it was a really nice piece. I'm excited to see it. What?
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite typical of these early long swords, where they're almost two-handed, single-handed blades, if you know what I mean. The length of the blades haven't grown up drastically. They're not much bigger than single-handed broadsword blades of the period, but it's the grip's the main noticeable difference, you know.
Yeah.
And you've got something of a meteor pommel going on with it as well.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about that ever since I left, and I was thinking about, like, well, due to the fact of the size of it, and I'm totally conjecture here, I'm wondering if, because the big thing with Stirling Bridge is the cavalry got taken out, but we don't think this was used by anyone on horse, right? This was someone on foot who was using this blade. This is my theory.
This could easily be used either, on foot or cavalry. I think. Yeah.
Do you know? I guess going back to the original find, do you remember where, or do you know how these were found?
The only provenance in that sense was found in the banks of the Forth, at the site of the battle, and I since discovered that there is local lore of residents who had heard that there were swords found at the site where the battle actually happened. because it's all quite a precise location, you know.
We were trying to find it walking around, but it's hard to tell. So.
Yeah. It's not, the original bridge was a wooden bridge, and the records state it was basically destroyed at the end of the battle, and we think it was destroyed by the English to prevent the Scots following up, you know. And so we're keeping the two forces on opposite sides of the Forth. It was only, well, the bridge was rebuilt in the 15th century. It's thought late 15th, early 16th century.
And that's one of the existing bridges. Right?
Yeah. But the location of the original bridge has always been known. And in long, dry summers, the foundations have been noticeable as well. So I think locals have always known exactly where the battle happened.
Yeah, so these were found in what, I forgot the date. Was it 1890s or was it before then?
1869 for the broadsword and 1878 for the longsword.
Yeah. Okay. Incredible. So the arming sword was the next one that we had to, and the arming sword, I think, is what tells a much bigger story here, that it's really exciting from a maker's perspective. Both pieces are extremely exciting. But yeah, the arming sword for me is, the more I thought about it, the more my brain just wanted to keep learning more about it. So here's the arming sword we got a chance to see in person. And the first thing I noticed is like, man, that's a tiny pommel. But that's a big discussion we're going to get into here.
Absolutely.
I guess you want to give us a little bit of info on the background here and how you came about this guy?
Yeah, so it was the 23rd of June. Actually, I remember because 23rd of June was the evening before the Battle of Bannockburn. And whenever I remember each year on the 23rd of June, I post something up on my Armories group, which is a little meme showing Robert the Bruce splitting the head of Henry de Bohun the evening before Bannockburn, famous incident. And I created quite a humorous little poem about that, you know, that went on the meme. So I posted that up, and then there was a comment from a friend in Australia saying quite casually that he had a friend in Australia who had a sword that had come out of the river there, and he wanted it to come back to Scotland. And look, almost a throwaway comment, you know. I'm like, what? What are you saying? So I shot a message right away. I said, like, what's the story with the Bannockburn sword? Have you got any pics? And he sent me a picture, and I forwarded that to James Elmsley, who's like Mr. Medieval in Scotland here when it comes to sword.
Yeah, I should ask to have him on here. I forgot. Sorry, James.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And, James and I were all over this image, zooming in and figuring out what we're seeing. Is it authentic? Is it looking right? And it kind of went from there. And what happened was the collector was actually wanting it to come back and play a part in Scottish culture again. He was wanting its story to be known and, you know, be more widely available. So I put my case forward that I think I can, you know, be in a position to help with that and help facilitate that. And it was agreed the sword was to come over shortly after and be in my care until as much research could be done as possible. And it's been quite special to have that here. And the discoveries that have come about from this single sword have been astounding. We're still learning from it.
Yeah, and did you have both at the same time at one point?
They both came together in an unexpected way. Not long after the longsword had sold at auction, and I did know one person that was bidding in that auction. I called them straight after, and they said, "No, I didn't get it. It went beyond budget, you know." And I thought, well, maybe I'll just never know who's got it. Because as soon as things sell at auction, the auction houses won't tell you, you know, details of the bidders. Right. And I thought, well, it could go anywhere, and maybe I'll never see it again, you know. Went into a period of silent mourning, almost, you know. And then soon after, I was given a talk for the Stuart Society, and I was asked to give them a talk about the Stirling Bridge swords at Stirling Bridge. And I said, that's fantastic, of course. You know, it'd be the first chance to bring the broadsword back to where it came out of the water in the 19th century. So I gave him a talk about the longsword, and I showed him the reproduction. I gave him a talk about the broadsword, and they were quite astounded to see that. But then my friend said, I've got an old friend here you should meet, and he just wheeled around the original longsword. It wasn't him that bought it, it was his friend there that bought it.
Right.
But I was just astounded to see it again.
Just
And
casually, you know, here's a sword.
And to hold them together on Stirling Bridge where the battle was fought, it was quite a moment.
Oh yeah, yeah, man, that's awesome. Yeah, I thought that was a funny story. I remember you telling me that, and I was like, everybody needs to hear that story. So that's really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got some more images here of the arming sword. So yeah, we talked a little bit when I was there about the writing. I guess you want to talk about that a little bit, because that was kind of a big clue, right? On hey, these two swords were probably found by the same person, or at least the same group.
This kind of blew my mind a little when I realized what this sword was. So my friend sent me a second image, which was of the whole sword, and I could decipher the remains of the painted provenance on the blade. And I think he was just mistaken about thinking it was from Bannockburn, and it turned out to be the second Stirling Bridge sword, because the painted provenance read, used at Battle of Stirling Bridge, 1297, found in the River Forth, 23rd of March, 1869. And that just blew me away, you know, because it was remarkably similar to the written paper provenance that was preserved with the longsword. And that said, Battle of Stirling Bridge, 1297, found in the River Forth, 1878.
Right.
What are the chances? You know,
that it would be written the exact same way, right?
What was even more mind-blowing was when I got the chance to get the broadsword and the longsword together again before it auctioned at Bonham's. When this sword came in, the broadsword came in, I said, can I, make a visit and get these two swords together? And they were more than happy. They were being really obliging. And then I noticed something in the longsword blade I kind of missed the first time, or I hadn't realized its significance, and it was white paint. It was white paint on the blade, but it wasn't seemingly lettering. It wasn't painted lettering. It was like a block, a rectangular block that had partly corroded away, and you couldn't see if anything had been written on it, but clearly it was painted on with the intention for that provenance to be written on in ink. And of course, ink on white paint over time, just with handling, is going to wear away. So they would have transferred that same lettering, that same wording onto paper. And that explained why the longsword had the written paper provenance. But it was so similar to what was painted on the broadsword. I mean, can you imagine anyone painting anything in white paint on an original medieval sword now? You'd say, what are you doing? But you know what? I'm very glad they did this in the 19th century, because it tells us that story about the sword today.
It's amazing. So that's over 100 years old itself, just the markings they put on there. And I'm just surprised that I don't know how it survived on the arming sword here, but it did.
The broadsword blade there is quite well preserved, as a lot of freshwater finds are. We love freshwater found swords because of that anaerobic environment, especially if it's going into a very kind of muddy, bed, because it just very, very, very slowly builds that black rust that once it's there, preserves that blade. That's it. It's not going to corrode anymore. And this blade has all the signs of being that. The blade was one thing, and the provenance, all made sense in terms of matching with the longsword. But discoveries just got deeper and deeper, looking at different elements of it.
Actually, let's go back a little bit. So before we go into all that, I noticed, I was like, that pommel's interesting. And I was, my first thought was, Is it hollow? Was my first thought, and
Well,
sure enough, it is. Right.
it is, and it was the second image that my friend in Australia sent me of the whole sword, where I said to him, "Oh my God," I said, "is that a copper alloy pommel?"
Yeah.
I was already aware of these in Scotland because I used to be on the board of SAFAP, that's the Scottish Archaeological Finds Allocation Panel. That's a board that works directly with Treasure Trove, okay, for all the finds going through process. And I got to see all these metal detecting finds from all over the country going through process. It was a great place to be for that. And I noticed these pommels. Every now and again, another pommel would turn up. And they were invariably of the same type, exactly the same type as this. So I already had a file on these pommels, okay? Already started collecting files on them to find out, you know, they're like within millimeters of each other, you know? And I thought, perhaps these are even Scottish, you know? And I couldn't find a single complete sword with one until this sword turned up, and that was exciting.
Yeah, so this is the first sword with one of these pommels, but we found this is just a sample of them, right? This isn't all of them.
Yeah. I've done a deeper dive since that's led to the creation of this, and there's 22 in all. So there's 21 pictured here. I'm still waiting on one image of another to arrive from the National Museum of Scotland to complete this picture. But obviously you can see right along the top row and most of the middle row, they're mostly this round form with a gentle kind of, you know, chamfering either side.
Yeah.
A couple of them are in the middle there. There's a couple that are slightly more oval in form, and then there's a few wheel pommel types.
Yeah.
But then you've got the octagonal faceted forms. And up until very recently, these were exclusively Scottish finds. Like,
I remember.
only
So that was
found in Scotland.
Yeah, that was another article I had read weeks before I left. Was somebody found one, right? Or maybe months before.
And
somebody found another one.
It's that one on the bottom right there, which I just call the North Yorkshire pommel right now because that's where it was found. It came out the ground quite recently, and it's gorgeous. It's one of the richly decorated versions, full of very overt Christian iconography and symbolism. And as soon as it came out the ground, I shot the guy a message straight away to say, this is quite interesting, by the way, and here's why, you know. So this is the only one found, the only one of this form, certainly, found outside Scotland, but it's not far outside Scotland. And I think it's possible to even identify the year in history that went in the ground.
Wow. So speaking of where you found them, so you want to give a quick description here? This is when I started getting super excited. Well, I mean, I was already super excited. I started getting more and more excited on the maker side. And we'll dive into that in a second here. But yeah, you want to give a quick description on what we're looking at here?
Yeah, no problem. So, you know, studying history is always a big game of joining the dots, right? And making sense and building a bigger picture. So this was what had to be done here. And so I started mapping as accurately as possible because most of the files on these pommels have 10-figure grid references, which is right down to square meter of land. So it's possible to map all these pommels, and you can see a general distribution across kind of, you know, lower central Scotland. But what was then fascinating was to overlay that, and that's the map on the right. So all the green dots are the pommels, and on the right, the kind of orangey dots are significant conflicts of the Scottish Wars of Independence. And it was possible to determine that two of the pommels are directly related to battlefields, the Stirling Bridge sword being one of them, and the other with the Battle of Black Ernside in Fife. But all other 20 pommels are absolutely related to conflicts or troop movements between conflicts of the Scottish Wars of Independence. And there was a further correlation that was astounding. Every single pommel has the consistency, regularity of being found on flat ground by a river. Every single one. And that tells you something more about these pommels and even why they're made the way they are.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit. Let's go back to the sword here. So one of the other things I noticed immediately is how thin this particular piece was, and the whole piece seems very light and very easy and quick to put together, if that makes sense.
Exactly. I can show you one right here.
Oh, hold on. Let me highlight you real quick. Oh, I'm trying to remember how to do this here. There we go.
So I'll hold it steady so it picks up on the detail.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
So this is one of the faceted versions, and you can see it's one of the decorated faceted versions too.
Yeah.
And this is one that was found in Ayrshire, and you can see it's broken. You can see that's the tang aperture there, where the tang slot was. But you can see it's actually really quite thin.
Yeah.
Thin-walled, yeah.
Yep.
And really, these are only a millimetre and a half, maybe. Millimetre and a half at most, 1.2 mil, let's say. And thin-walled. But where it's possible to identify what's in them, then they're packed with clay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say they're filled with.
That's your substance inside, basically.
Yeah.
And everyone is found on flat ground by a river, and the majority of those found individually are broken like this. They're either at least cracked or they're significantly broken. So this starts to tell us, because they're on the campaign trail, it's telling us actually these are campaign pommels. These are pommels that are being used by campaign armourers, and it's a shortcut to that work in fitting out blades or in replacing pommels when you're on the move on campaign. Because what's one of the greatest considerations of an army moving on campaign
you gotta have lightweight.
Exactly. You got to consider the weight of everything that's being carried.
Yeah.
You know yourself, it's not going to be possible to take a forge the size of forging sword blades on campaign, and who's going to be spending hours forging a single, or days forging a single blade on campaign anyway. So you take your blades prefabricated. Guards perhaps you can forge on small mobile campaign forges, but pommels, again, you'll know the effort it takes to
significant amount of heat for that. Yeah, same with the. So that was at least we think maybe why those blades are so thin, right? Because you can bundle packs of those really thin blades.
Yeah, exactly. This blade here is only 4 millimeters thick. 4 mil.
We're super thin.
You know, who's going to start with making any medieval sword blade with 4 millimeter stock today? You know, you do expect them to be thicker. But here we're looking at a campaign sword. You know, the guard itself even still has identifiable hammer blows. So that's an unfinished surface. Yeah, it's a munition quality unfinished surface. It's the right shape. It'll do the job. Bang it on there. You know, you're not going to have fussy customers if it's not got a polished finish.
Yeah. So, I mean, so when I first saw the question was, why is that pommel the way it is? And that's the answer, right? I mean, because during this time that they weren't sitting still, right? They were on constant campaign, right?
Absolutely. And those armourers are only going to have the chance to fire up the forges and do that armoury work if they know they're going to be in that area for, let's say, a couple of days or more. You know?
So can you imagine having to make blades in that situation?
Yeah.
I had to come up with some shortcuts, right?
Then they're filled with clay.
Yeah.
And where are they camped? Always camped by a river.
Yep.
So that would be alluvial clay that you find in pretty much any river in Scotland. Yeah,
and I could be misremembering, but did you get a chance to study some of the actual clay material and get it sampled?
So far I've got one sample, and I've got a sample of the clay from the North Yorkshire pommel. That pommel came back to the finder, so he was able to extract a sample for us. I have bigger museum is not far from me in the borders here, and they have a lovely example of one of these pommels. They've promised that I can, take a sample from that one anytime, and the owner of the sword here has said it's no problem to extract a sample out the Stirling Bridge sword. So that gives us a base of 3 samples at least to get mass spectrometry analysed, and that should give us a compositional breakdown of each clay to identify geologically where that's come from.
Yeah, awesome. Do you know when they'll know that, or?
I've been trying to chase Stirling. I think it's Stirling University Labs said they could do it, but then I'm like, well, give me a cost, guys, and they've still got to get back to me, and we've got to get the wheels rolling on it.
Yeah. So what really gets my brain going on this whole topic is, and I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but so as a modern maker, a lot of our customers and the industry as a whole, I think, is very particular on the way like sword balance, weight, all these sorts of sword properties, balancing out, to a proper finished blade. But in no way, historically in this example, would the armorers have a chance to really do that, right? Because they're rushing to get these blades together.
Yeah,
and just getting something that works. I guess the one difference is because everything is so thin and light to begin with, maybe it wasn't as important.
I think you're right on that. That if you're looking at a 4mm stock blade, let's say, then it's not going to need an excessively heavy pommel anyway, right, for you to still move that swiftly enough. So
but I doubt they were like, I doubt they put the clay in the pommel, assembled the whole sword, and was like, no, it needs more clay, put a little bit more in. Rush, right? So
if it works in the hand enough, it's going to be good enough,
Yeah. So I know this, and thanks for all the work that so all the finds and everything that we just saw is due to Paul's work and putting all that stuff together and capturing, all the finds that have happened, and so he's put a tremendous amount of work in, which is fantastic to see. Do we think this might have been common throughout Europe, or is it mainly, you think, kind of limited to that area? Do you think they maybe took that idea and technology from existing examples of that work already at that time?
That's a good question. I have no idea if this has been studied in the same way in any European context. I really don't know.
Really anywhere else, but
I don't know. I'd love to see it studied in the same way. I don't know who would do that, but I think anyone that could start to look into this in a European scale or in other countries, it would be fascinating to see what comes out in terms of parallels.
So my first thought, and this might, I don't know if you want to dive into this or not, so tell me to stop if you don't, but my first thought is when I think of long campaigns, I think of the Crusades, and I'm like, I wonder if this is what they were doing on the Crusades. And so I don't know if you want to dive further into that, because there are maybe some other parallels there. But and that would have been roughly the same time, a little bit before, right? A little bit after. So I kind of wonder if anyone's found any bronze pommels along those routes anyway.
It would be amazing to to confirm that. I know there are examples that have come up in England, various locations in England, but not nearly as many. I've not been able to find half as many, let's say, in England as have come up in Scotland, and it seems to be quite likely because there was such concentrated conflict at that time regarding campaign forces on both sides, Scottish and English forces, engaging on active campaign for so long throughout all the Scottish Wars of Independence.
So I guess my brain goes, I wonder if maybe that comes from the bronzes specifically, and the idea of using that as, do we think that they were cast, by the way, or do they more like
they would have been cast. One of the pommels, only one as far as I know, has been analysed for its composition, and that's one example that's in the National Museum of Scotland, and it was found to be a relatively high lead content bronze, which if you're casting fairly thin-walled pommels, that makes sense.
So I'm wondering if maybe that's a technology that would have came from the area from earlier, earlier inhabitants in the same region, like if that came from not from Europe, but this is a homegrown technology. So
Yeah. I mean, we've a long experience throughout the Bronze Age with casting
Right.
bronze shape.
Yeah, that's what I was
So I
thinking.
think some of that would have followed through history for sure.
Yeah, because there's no reason why you couldn't use bronze, right? Always for pommels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, really exciting, and just thinking about, when you're on a campaign, you're sitting by a river, and all of a sudden, hey, you guys need some blades, and you got to start working on it.
Yeah. There was quite an exciting parallel also that came up. I said I'd try to find a complete sword with one of these pommels and couldn't find one.
Right.
Only after this one appears, I did find another one.
Oh, you did? That's right.
And it was in Leeds Armories.
Yeah.
And so I had to make a trip, and I took this broadsword down to Leeds Armories to get the two of them side by side. And the pommel's pretty much identical. But what was fascinating was the blade was, for the most part, near identical as well.
Yeah.
And I could see the length from top of pommel to blade shoulders looked the same. The tang width looked the same. The fullering and shoulder width looked the same. And I thought, if this blade is 4mm, that's going to tell me something more. And that's the one measurement I just wanted to come back with. And as soon as I turned it side on, oh yes, 4mm, spot on.
Wow. And was that a Scottish find as well, or do they know where that was from?
It didn't come with any more specific provenance.
Okay. What's funny is I have images of that piece, and I should have thought to copy them here because I took images of it when I was at Leeds. Yeah. So I should have thought to bring it, but I forgot to copy them here. So sorry, guys watching. But so now 2 swords that are complete with those types of pommels. Yeah. So I guess the other interesting thing is we found a lot of broken ones, right? So do we think that happened due to usage, or just rushing the manufacturing process and breaking during putting it together, or a bit of both?
More than likely, I think, in usage. Because they're relatively thin-walled, it's not going to take too much. It's going to be a strike with pretty much any weapon. To that, it's going to crack it at least.
Yep.
And once it's cracked like that, you probably don't want to go forward with it, in a less unstable condition. So you would just take it to the armorers and say, swap that out, guys, and it's going to be a pretty swift job to do.
Right. So the reason why I thought about that is just yesterday I was working on some blades and I was doing some peening, and I missed the peen a little bit and smashed the pommel. I was like, I was in a rush, not paying attention. But had that been,
you wonder how many were broken for that reason too.
Yeah,
damn it.
Yeah,
that one off.
So, I do kind of want to try my hand at making one of these. So if I can find a similar type clay, I don't know if I could around here. I'd have to maybe, chemically make a clay that'll be close enough, right? And just try it. Any thoughts on what the grip might have been, by the way, on that guy? Let me pull him up again real quick.
Again, if it's a campaign sword, it's going to be simple.
Just slabs of wood and wrap, or
I reckon, probably quick sandwich grip, leather wrap. You're good.
Yeah, because that is pretty wide tang as well, which you need for a thin blade, right?
Yeah. So it's going to be the swiftest. The swiftest you can kind of wedge in ear on campaign.
And I was trying to remember. Did you recreate this one as well, or not yet?
I've not recreated this yet, but it's next on the list basically. So coming soon.
What do you think? You'll do something similar then for the grip? You think, or?
I'll do something just fairly basic, basically. That would be down to how long. It's not a long grip, so even if you were to do a twine wrap, wet leather form, still not going to take you too long. So I would go with something fairly basic, and of course I'll have to get the pommels cast in the same way, finding the right place to do that, because I've not got a foundry set up here.
You have to flush cast too, right?
But I'm going to go back to Stirling Bridge to get alluvial clay from the banks of the River Forth to fill these pommels with. So you've got some heritage clay as part of the sword as well.
I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah, it's got to be done.
Yeah. I mean, I should have grabbed some while I was there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Bring it back.
I've already got heritage wood from the battlefield, from an older tree that grew from the banks right where the battle was fought, that I use in the grips here.
Yeah. Speaking of, again, I don't know how much we can get into this at the moment as well, but so I was researching a bit more on the area and excavations, and shocked that there have not been any, right? There's really no excavations in that site until pretty soon, right? So they plan on, I can't remember the name of the group that was doing it, but they plan on doing an excavation, I guess, near where the football or the soccer field currently is, or football field.
Yeah. So this is my wee battlefield archaeology group. I started some years ago called Conflict of Interest, and good
name, really good name.
Yeah. So we can't touch anywhere, anywhere north of the stone bridge, basically, up for a certain distance, which covers right over the original bridge. That is all on the Historic Scotland map. It's a big red block that says that's a Historic Scotland scheduled monument. And they can schedule any location as being historically significant enough that basically you can't touch that with metal detecting, and you can't dig it or you can't develop it because it's historically sensitive. Right. If it's part of an official archaeological dig, that's different. But it's unlikely there's going to be anything done there. But the run of the river south of there was actually where a significant part of that battle happened, and a lot of kit and troops and men and horses and went in the water.
They funneled the cavalry in that area, correct? Or am I thinking of it? Was that right?
It's why tactically the battle played out kind of sharpish and in a very effective way, because the Scots waited until you've got the cavalry and about half the troops across before they charged. So you're leaving the other half of the troops on the other side of the bridge that was only wide enough to get two horses across, abreast. So you're attacking half the force effectively, which you've then caught in a kind of horseshoe loop of land as the River Forth kind of loops around like this. So you smash them and you've got them all, and they can't go anywhere. Right. You either they've got to stand and fight or die, or end up in that river in the
down in the water. Yeah,
and that was part of the reason that attack worked. They're trapped. So there should be no reason there wouldn't be arms and armor in that whole stretch of the river. And
the river,
we focus on that and see if that's possible.
And the river flows that way, right?
Exactly.
Downstream. So exciting to see what you guys find.
So we'll see. A lot of these things are great in theory. Let's go out there. Let's go find stuff. But especially today, getting the right permissions in place from the relevant authorities, that's a big part of the battle you've got to fight now.
Are they going to do any non-destructive like sensing first, like any LiDAR or anything like that, to try to be specific? Or
our group is we're looking to step up majorly with our equipment and move away from metal detecting as our primary kit to airborne magnetometry. So that's a fairly recent technology that's now commercially available, and we're hoping to get that on board because that's a game changer. That will ping your magnetic anomalies, subsoil or subaquatic, and tell you what's going on there. That's the best way to narrow the ground effectively.
So do you think with that sort of evidence that maybe you could get more official archaeological digs going? Or
I think it could definitely help. If you could bring that evidence forward first to say, look, non-invasive survey here, it's confirming there's 100% there's something going on here, and look where it is historically. This could be significant. That I think could definitely help swing things to get green light.
That's so exciting. I was when I was there, I was like, if you need help, I'll come dig. And
I'll give
definitely
you
that
a-
offer's always open. I'll be hands, digging. I think that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, bring your flippers.
Exactly. Yeah, I do have my dive license, although I don't think it counts in the UK, but I have a US version. So I was curious. So this is our main talk today has been about Stirling, and because the fines have been from that. But do we think there's as much, I guess, availability and provenance to go look at, Bannockburn and all the other different battle sites? I don't know if maybe some of those have already been excavated. I'm not sure.
Bannockburn's been one that's quite a few historians and archaeologists have looked and tried to find that battle, and very little's come up from it. Now, curiously enough, I came across a little, quite a short booklet that was written, I think, in the 1930s, and it was written by a historian that clearly, I think he was a local, because he knew the ground like the back of his hand, and he was relating all the references, the contemporary references to landmarks and exactly where things had happened, and he was bringing it all together, and he created a map to suggest where things happened. I've read it through, I've cross-referenced myself, and I don't see anything wrong with his findings. I think he was actually on the money. And exactly where he puts the main part of the battle, if you cross-reference that with Google Maps now, it's pretty much all built on. It's pretty much all developed, and it's houses and it's tarmac, and it's roads. So I still think he's right, but the chances of now finding anything that's under tarmac and built on is very, very slim, unless someone starts, digging their gardens deep enough.
Also, I was going to ask is how far down do we think it might be? But do you know, in reference to where? So I went over to the Bruce's monument there, where they and there it says here is where it was, but is that not correct, or is it just slightly into the housing community that's right there?
There's actually been quite a bit of detecting done around that area, and very little, if anything, coming out of it. Because you would still expect to find, finds enough.
But there's a lot of development all around it, right? So
you're right. Battles do range. No battle's really just contained in a tiny area. So I think things can still be found yet. In fact, there was a significant part of Bannockburn fought across the River Forth, and it was said you could walk dry shod across the bodies at the end of it. I've always thought that has to be the greatest concentration of metal finds from that battle still in the water there, but it's determining exactly which part of the River Forth that happened in, and I don't think that's been identified to date as well.
Yeah, because that'd be pretty far from where the Bruce's monument is, right?
Yeah.
So they think that's where his camp was, right? Or do they think that's where the battle was?
It wouldn't be too close to it, actually.
Yeah.
But I still think that's worth investigating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again,
how far?
That's where airborne magnetometry could be really quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. I don't know how long it'll be before that's a thing, but I'm excited to see the findings from that, and just such great history there. And I think a lot of us grew up. We saw Braveheart, and it was such a game changer of a movie when we saw it. Inspired us to make things, and then we read about it and realized the movie was all wrong. So but the real history is even better. So I know we joked about it, but it's like, I wonder why they didn't in the film. Like, why didn't they? The real battle would have been so much cooler than what they showed on TV.
I actually have a copy of the original Braveheart script, and it was scripted with a bridge. The Battle of Stirling Bridge was supposed to be shown pretty much as it happened, but I think it was just budget and time.
Right? Yeah, time, budget. It all comes down to time and budget. Right? So, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, that would have been. So hopefully someday, some film will actually do it justice. But,
just that story of that battle is enough, I think, to base a movie around. It would be epic. It would be epic.
and that's just one of many, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does stand out because it was, I think, the first major conflict of forces on either side.
Right.
And yeah, tactically, it played out in a kind of perfect way for the Scots. It was that mighty morale boost right at the start of the Wars of Independence, and I think it was the first example of what's the right word for it? A rebel, but a local force defeating a professional army.
Yeah, full on huge army. Yeah, just wiped the whole thing out. I mean, absolutely. So that was the one thing that the film did, I think, quite well, is just show the gravity of that situation and how it turned the tides a little bit. At that time.
Yeah,
you really get a sense of that. But,
absolutely.
Alrighty, well, thanks again for coming on and joining us. And I just realized now, I've been sipping on this the whole time. I usually start Sword Talks with "What are we drinking?" and I totally forgot because I've been really excited about this whole topic. So, but yeah, so I've been drinking the Stag's Breath.
That's nice.
Yeah, I got a couple bottles I brought home. So
yeah, that's quite nice.
Yeah, every time I'm over there, so to get this here in the States, it's over $100 a bottle. But over there, it's only like what, 30 bucks or pounds a bottle. So yeah, I grab as much as I can and bring it over. So
okay, I might just have to be doing a wee bootleg run when I'm coming over to Vegas soon. So
yeah, there you go. I wonder, I'll be able to bring one or two with me because I'm doing a check. So, yeah, if you want to come over and just sell it, you'll make a fortune, right?
Yeah. Okay. Good call.
But yeah, thank you so much for all your time and especially all your research that you've been doing and the dedication that you had to this whole topic. I'm excited to learn about all this and keep following along. And so, from the maker's perspective, I'm now thinking about, okay, can I try to do what some of these guys were doing back then? And I don't know if they would sell. Like if I were to make one, I don't think anyone would buy it because they'd be like, what? Yeah, compared to modern days. But just the historical nature of it and just having one in my own collection, I think could be neat to do.
Yeah. I agree.
So yeah, thanks again. I guess before we jump off here, anything else you want to talk about? And feel free, if you have any upcoming events. I wasn't sure if you had already done. There's another auction coming up that you were making some pieces for. Did that already happen, or does that come up soon?
Not yet. Well, I'm planning to make a handful of the Stirling Bridge longswords first. I've just got to get the hilt casting sorted for that. Yeah. And I'll be making these individually available by private auction through the MacDonald Armories group. Awesome. So yeah, keep an eye on that. And if there happens to be any philanthropic billionaires out there wanting to invest in some airborne magnetometry for a small Scottish battlefield archaeology group that's on the cusp of making historically significant finds, get in touch.
Well, hopefully, I don't think we have that many viewers, but those who are watching, spread the word. So,
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Oh yeah, it's so exciting. I do hope to at least come over again sometime soon to, just to be in the area. Just to do. I have a couple more pieces I want to look at myself that I haven't got. I saw them, but I wanted to get a lot more detailed images and maybe talk to the curators to say, hey, can I just get the white gloves on and weigh this and look at a couple of things. So who knows if it'll happen, but it's never hurts to ask, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And let us know. So I guess where can folks find you online? Is your website still going? I don't recall.
Yeah, there's a website, MacDonald Armories. I don't update that nearly as much as I should. But
I understand that.
pretty much daily. Putting content up on the MacDonald Armories Facebook group. That's
Facebook group. Okay.
Find us.
That's right. And I got to make sure I'm on that. I hope I am. Okay. So, yeah, I'll keep updated there. And if anyone, for you guys watching, if you're interested in this, follow Paul on the MacDonald Armories on Facebook. And yeah, I think really exciting stuff is coming, and I mean, the stuff that's already here is exciting. And if you know Paul's work, you know everything he does is beautiful. So, yeah. Alrighty. Well, thanks again.
Thanks very much, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
All right, take care.
Cheers.